Beautiful women is like shooting a jump shot in the NBA. You gotta shoot your shots.
Yeah.
Hope you make them.
And making the shot means getting good-looking women. If you don't make it, that means you get ugly ones.
He's right, ladies and gentlemen.
And we're back with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. I know that's going to be a thing now before any time that comes up, but it's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, where we cover the latest news and trends in pop culture each and every week, twice a week, wherever you get your podcasts. And on this weekend's episode, please go ahead and check out our thoughts as we bring special guest Robbie Ross on the show for a instructional video and also in this case audio on Warhammer. We all go to school for Warhammer 101. Want to know more about the IP? The IP that Henry Cavill will be starring in a series for. He goes ahead and explains it for you in detail. So greatly appreciative of that. Plus Hamanish Goel on his usual Bollywood updates. So go ahead and check that out today, wherever you get your podcast. Plus also Inside Sports Fantasy Football. It's not too late to go ahead and check out the guys from the Lakers Fast Break. As he meaning Magic Man, he meaning Joe Soro, and also as well myself and Chris Ardieri. We talk week 4 in the NFL, so go ahead and check it out today. We get your podcast. Plus also, of course, Joe Soro. He also goes ahead and checks out everything that's going on with LakersBall.com. Go ahead and check him out as Ox1947 at LakersBall.com. Plus his great company that he owns. Please support if you are in the Southern California area. Today, Simblades. Simblades with the Y.com. Our good friends Empire Jeff at Empire Jeff TV. He had an awesome stream last night just before ours. Actually, it was going a little bit concurrently. It kind of ran over into our time that we were on. But you know what? With the magic of YouTube, you can catch them both in full. So go ahead and check that out today. Empire Jeff TV. Awesome stream indeed. Really appreciate his hard work and all the things that he does. Go ahead and subscribe to his channel. Also, as well, our good friend John McCallion. He's got an awesome YouTube channel as well. Please support him today. And speaking of YouTube channels, you see the little Joe in the right-hand corner of the screen? No, I'm not talking about the one right below me. I'm talking about the one a little bit off to the right with the big beady eyes. Go ahead and make sure you click on that to get the latest notifications on when we go live on the air with the latest Lakers Fast Break podcasts. Well, our guest, Tony Jones from The Athletic, he said he will be here in a few minutes, but we thought we'd go ahead and get you up to speed on some of the things around the NBA that are going on, including a major injury, a major release, and also as well a signing that did not go unnoticed by us. Kind of ignored it on the past couple shows intentionally because we really didn't want to touch on it, but you know what? We're going to go ahead and expose it anyways for you out there. But here today to go ahead and talk about that is a good man indeed. He's the madman from Toronto. He did get out of Toronto traffic to go ahead and talk with Tony Jones. Hopefully today it is the Magic Man, Sean Grice. Magic Man, great to have you here. Thank you for lining up this awesome interview I'm looking forward to on the Utah Jazz with a season preview. Your thoughts, though, my friend, first up. Oh, and he's here right now. Welcome, Tony Jones from The Athletic. Truly appreciate it. My name is Gerald Glassford. Also as well, of course, Magic Man, Sean Grice. He's in the left corner of your screen. He's the guy who set everything up. And also my good friend as well and fellow panelist, it is Joe Soro. Tony, great to have you here and welcome. Thank you for being part of the Lakers Fast Break.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And thanks for Sean for reaching out to me and setting this up.
I'll tell you what, though.
Absolutely, Tony. You know, when I first started blogging about the Lakers in 09 and 10, you were one of the first guys on the scene. You were like top notch, man. I really appreciate all the hard work you put into this, and thank you for coming on the show.
No, I appreciate it, man. Those are kind words, and I really definitely appreciate them. So hopefully we can still rock on and keep making good content for sure.
Wanted to ask you real quick on this. It's not Utah Jazz related, but I wanted to ask it because it was a major injury that was reported earlier today by Draymond Green. out with the sprained ankle, and those things can be nasty and lingering throughout the entire season. But the word is a 4 to 6 week injury that he's going to be out for a little while. Your thoughts on what his injury will do initially to the Golden State Warriors?
I think I guess the first thought that you have is obviously that pushes Chris Paul into the starting lineup, and there's not a lot of there's not a lot of guesswork there, and I actually think that's good for the Warriors, because that would have been probably a huge storyline throughout training camp, and it's something that with Green out that they just probably no longer have to deal with at this point. At least for training camp, you could kick the can down the road for another day. But obviously on the court, it's a huge impact, because Draymond is so impactful defensively. He's kind of like their quarterback offensively, especially with the ball in his hands, the way he makes reads, his passing, his rebounding, and then just being the emotional leader as well. The Warriors have a really tough open to this season. First 10, 15 games, I believe something like 7 of 9 or 8 or 10, 8 of their first 10 are on the road. And, they're coming off a season where they were not a good road team. So I think if this goes out to 6 weeks, if it's a 4-week injury, then we're looking at, opening night, here or there, give or take a few nights. But if it's a 6-week injury, you're looking at the bulk of that hard open to the season in terms of the schedule. And, and then, obviously the Warriors have to compensate without their best defender and their best passer.
Magic Man, want to throw any thoughts on that? Or Reggie Bullock being waived by the Spurs, and Josh Primo, he was signed to a 2-way contract. Even though he does have a 4-game suspension to start the season, he was signed to a 2-way contract with the Clippers. Any thoughts on any of those?
Yeah, Tony, the Josh Primo news is kind of out of left field. Like he'd been like whisper quiet, like him and his people. So this signing with the Clippers is kind of out of the blue. What do you make of it? And obviously, for some people, it just feels like it's a step in another direction for an organization that has a few questionable decisions made in the past. So, what did you make of the whole Primo Clippers vibe right now?
Well, I think that we as a league collectively need to do a better job at this. Josh Primo, Miles Bridges. I thought 4 games, for Josh Primo, even if he had been out of the league for almost a full calendar year, I thought 4 games was pretty lenient. So, I mean, you look at that. My first thought is that the onus is on the Clippers to be right about this, right? Like they have to be right. Josh Primo has to be a model citizen. Not only does he have to be a model citizen off the floor, but I think he has to be a model citizen on the floor and in the locker room as well. I understand from a basketball perspective why Josh Primo is going to get a chance. I did not think that, somebody like a Josh Primo or even a Miles Bridges were going to be out of the league for the rest of their life. Both of those guys are really, really talented. And Josh Primo is a really talented. He's really talented. And, so from that perspective, I do understand why a team would say, hey, here's a 2-way, here's a prove it, let's do that. But, I would have been much more comfortable if that 4-game suspension was a 30-game suspension or even a 40-game suspension. A suspension like, hey, we have to make you feel it. Here's a chunk. Here's a huge chunk out of this season. This has to be a deterrent. But the Clippers better be right about him as a citizen. And as a citizen around the organization, as a citizen, just as a representative of the NBA as well. So, those are kind of my thoughts. I do think that, if those I's are dotted, if those T's are crossed, then Primo has enough talent to make an impact in this league eventually somewhere. So I'm not surprised from that specific perspective that he got another shot.
What are your thoughts, Joe, on this? On Primo or Draymond Green or even Reggie Bullock becoming a free agent, being, I guess, getting out of being waived and getting out of his contract per se, as far as he'll still be paid on it, but being waived by San Antonio earlier today. Go ahead, Joe. You're on now.
Sorry. Reggie Bullock, I'm not sure if he'll be in the league next few years. Honestly, I'm not really a big fan of his game. Draymond Green injury might be a blessing in disguise. You guys have heard me talk about Draymond Green the last couple of years. I believe he has regressed. He's one of those players that has regressed greatly from what he was, and it's getting worse by the year. I thought the signing was a a reward for a great career in Golden State. And I think it's going to not work for Golden State. I think Looney or Kuminga will be much better with the setup they're going to have here for the first 4 to 6 weeks. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a great one either, because you're going to be playing Darvin Ham ball, basically. You might actually be worse. You might have 4 perimeter players playing out of the 5 starters. So I don't see Golden State, unfortunately, stealing another championship as long as this team is intact. I think Clay has lost a few steps, and it's unfortunate too, because he could have had a Steph Curry type longevity if he hadn't had his legs shredded the way they did. So with that, I'm seeing a better situation without Draymond at the beginning of the year, but I don't see it resulting in any kind of championship for Golden State anytime soon. As far as Primo, I don't think he's going to make an impact either. I think the Clippers have no choice but to try and pick up any type of talent as they can, despite the situation that player might be in. And they're just trying to somehow figure out a way to keep Kawhi and Paul George healthy enough to where they can compete in the playoffs. And I've even heard that Kawhi Leonard is apparently very, very healthy, which is usually the first sign of BS, because that's just not going to happen. His knee is shredded. It's done. It's over. I think the positiveness is fine, but the reality is it's just not ever going to change, guys. I talked about this. I remember after the 2011 season with Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's knee was bone to bone. He had then in the offseason went to Germany. It was a very popular surgery at that time. It seemed like only Kobe and the elites used to do this, because that particular surgery, I don't know, I can't remember what it was called. It was some kind of platelet type surgery. It's not allowed in America, but Germany did it. And it would regenerate the cartilage, and Kobe would go to Germany, get it done, and then come back, and then had a pretty good couple of years until he ran the wheels off that year with D'Antoni and Dwight Howard. But even still, once that knee starts to get to that part, and you don't have really a lot of help, Paul George is good, but he's just hasn't been really healthy either. You're not going to get better as an 82-game season ends. It's usually just not good, which only adds to the fact that Kawhi Leonard should have went to the Lakers. Had Kawhi went to the Lakers, he probably would have won a couple more championships right now, because he would have helped the situation a little more. That's something we haven't talked about, the aftermath, the what ifs, and you guys know how I like the what ifs. So that's kind of where I'm at on Draymond, Primo, and Reggie Bullock. I did hear just not too long before we got on the show that he was released. Teams are trying to get whatever they can get right now before training camp, and we're going to get a chance to see here what materializes from it.
Once again, it's the Lakers Fast Break. We've got on Tony Jones from The Athletic, who does such a tremendous job. And please follow all of his great work today at The Athletic. Covers the Utah Jazz better than anyone else. Please go ahead and check out the tremendous work he's doing right there, along with Magic Man and Joe Soro. It's me, Gerald Glassford. Thanks so much for watching, listening. So let's get into the Utah Jazz, a team which Danny Ainge has remade. I don't know if you want to say in his own image per se, Tony, but he has obviously done a good job of rebuilding the team a lot faster than I think a lot of people would have anticipated. And I think it starts with Lauri Markkenen, who a lot of people did not think that he would be able to take this kind of step. So I ask you, first question, Lauri Markkinen, who had such a tremendous leap as far as going from one level of a player to another last season, can he maintain it going forward for the Utah Jazz?
I think he can. I do think that there's some onus on the Jazz to really address the point guard position, because what we really haven't talked about in regards to Lauri Markkinen, which was a really underrated factor in his leap, was that he had Mike Conley for 65, 70, 75% of the year. And Mike made his life really easy. Just like the way he runs pick and roll, the pocket passes, Lauri's looking up and the ball's right there, and he could just go up and he could just finish strong, or he's got a floater, or he's not seeing bodies in the paint. And it was a little different without Mike once Mike got traded. Lauri, to his credit, the production was there in March and towards the end of the season. The efficiency in March dropped after the trade a little bit, even though the production was there in terms of the points and the rebounds, the raw stats. But you could see that he was working a lot harder because he had to be a lot more ball in hand without Conley. So the Jazz are going into the season right now, and they don't know who's playing point guard, whether it's going to be Colin Sexton, whether it's even going to be Jordan Clarkson, whether it could even be Chris Dunn, who was pretty much out of the league for most of last year, whether it be Keonte George or whether it be Taylor Horton Tucker. So none of those five outside of Chris Dunn are, just natural floor general type point guards. And, Keonte George is the best passer, in my opinion, of that five, but he's also a teenager. So I just don't know if you can play a teenager in year one, 30 minutes a night, and try to make the playoffs, because the Jazz mission this year, they want to make the playoffs. They are trying to make the playoffs for more reasons than just making the playoffs. So, all of that ties into Lauri. So I think the long answer short is, a lot of the point guard play is going to depend on how much ball in hand he's going to have to be. And I think that that's going to impact positively or negatively what his production is going to be this year. I do think that, having an all-star year like last year, Lauri's going into this season with that kind of confidence that, he can be one of the best small forwards in the league, or, one of the best players in the league, offensive players in the league. He does things that gets points really easily. Like, he runs the floor really well. He's a really good offensive rebounder. He's an electric finisher around the rim, and he's a 40% three-point shooter. So there are things that he's going to do to where he's going to get his production regardless. But the leap for me as somebody covering the Jazz is, what are you doing in the last 5 minutes of the game? Can you be the closer? You can score 25 points a night in the first 40 minutes of the game, but in the last 8, when it's winning time, can you make that leap? So I guess that's my long-winded answer. But it's going to be really interesting to see how he comes off of that year, and he's not going to be able to sneak up on anybody this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's similar to what we're anticipating for Austin Reeves here in LA, where he's not going to be able to sneak up on anyone as well here in Los Angeles. But yeah, wishing Lauri another incredible year. It's great to see someone who's been able to work hard, but it wasn't, not everything went right his way early on in his career, injuries or otherwise. And now he's got a great place, a great fit in Utah. And I think he's that good things are going to happen to him going forward. Magic Man, what you got for Tony?
Absolutely. Yeah, Tony. There is a lot to like about the wings on this team. And they're big, man. They're big. 7 guys who are 6'9" or taller are on this squad. That's a lot. That's a lot. How do you see that logjam filling out? Because like a lot of guys had good FIBA tournaments who are in that group, right?
Right.
Fontecchio was pretty decent. Markkinen had a decent tournament. Um, you got to fit in Taylor Hendricks somewhere, right? Because you drafted him pretty high. How do you feel that logjam sorting out, Tony? Especially given the fact that, like you were reporting, they're looking to upgrade the guard position.
Well, I think the positive is when I look at the Jazz and I look at what they can do, I think that they're going to physically overwhelm a lot of opponents on a lot of nights because you're going to have Lauri at the 3, you're going to have John Collins at the 4, you're going to have Walker Kessler at the 5. All of those guys are plus athletes at their position. And, in the case of Lauri and Walker Kessler, they also have plus size and length to go with that plus athleticism. So, there are going to be a lot of nights when you look at those 3, and then you add in Kelly Olynyk off the bench, who was really good last year, versatile 7-footer, and and like you said, Taylor Hendricks off the bench as well. There are going to be a lot of nights where that depth and athleticism up front is going to cause a lot of teams a lot of issues. But the negative is. And, it's funny, we talked to General Manager Justin Zanuck and head coach Will Hardy last night. Everybody can't play every night. And I think when you look at the Jazz, for me, the Jazz have a real regular season roster. They have 11 or 12 guys who I think are NBA level rotation guys. But you ain't playing 12 guys every night. You're playing 9. So, there are going to be 2 or 3 guys who I consider to be good players who are just not going to be in the rotation. Now, Will Hardy is somebody who mixes and matches lineups. He plays hot hands. So if Taylor Hendricks has got the hot hand that night and Walker Kessler doesn't, then Taylor Hendricks closes. If Taylor Horton Tucker has the hot hand that night and Jordan Clarkson doesn't, then Taylor Horton Tucker closes. But there's still going to be guys that, are like, wow, I could do this every night. And, they're playing once every 5 or 6 games. So it's going to be really interesting to see, what the original rotation is, who it's going to be, who's it going to comprise of. But there's also going to be, the Jazz simply at some point are going to have to make a consolidation move to this roster. And, it's going to be really interesting to see if it comes in December or if it comes at the trade deadline or if it even comes next summer during the offseason.
Joe, what you got for Tony Jones, my friend?
I think the audience has several questions that I think.
Well, I'm going to hit him up on those before we hit the Lakers.
The Utah Jazz, starting last year, there was this thought that they would try to tank for Victor. Turns out that they were smashing everybody the first month. No one could kind of catch up to them. They were 3 games out, I believe, of the 10th spot last year. Do you see, it's essentially the same roster, do you see an improvement with another year under their belt together? And if you do see some improvement, is it enough to make Danny Ainge happy? Because I'm assuming Danny wants this thing to eventually get to a title contender. And how does he plan on doing that? Is it because if they stay in the middle of the pack, you know how it is in the NBA. You stay kind of in the middle of the pack, you kind of get stuck in purgatory. You either got to stink or you got to have the stars and kind of title contend. And I'm kind of curious on where Danny sits on where he sees this team here in the next 2 to 3 years.
Well, there's a couple of things. I do think the roster is a little different. They didn't have John Collins last year. They'll have him this year. So you're adding a guy who's 18 to 20 points a night. And they essentially added him for free. So
Yeah, Tony, were you surprised at the lack of return that Atlanta got there? Because like they came back with hat in hand with nothing in it. I was really
yeah.
surprised about that.
After all the years that Collins was a trade target, seemingly every single year.
Well, I think that the advantage for Atlanta in the trade for the Jazz is that they got rid of $25 million a year, and they found a team that could just simply take John into their cap space. But because of, I mean, essentially, John Collins was playing out of a corner for the last 2 years. Because you're playing with Trae Young, that offense is extremely heliocentric. And this is not a knock on Trae Young, because I mean, I'd make it heliocentric too, because Trae Young is as good as he is. But John Collins was pretty much, okay, I'm playing out of a corner. Sometimes I'm a vertical lob threat. If I get the ball, I shoot it. That was, he was not the John Collins of 3, 4, 5 years ago, where he's going out getting 18, 11, 20, and 10, things like that. So it was time. It wasn't as contentious as DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix, but it was, it was time, right? Like, it was time to get him off the roster. And I think that Atlanta just kind of got, what they could. So the Jazz are going to have the ball in his hands a lot more, not in a creator position, but they're going to run a lot more screen and rolls at him. They're going, John is, really excellent as a roller. Something like 1.5 points per possession per pick and roll that he's involved in. So that's a really good number that the Jazz have always liked. So I think they'll use him as a roller a lot. And they'll try to take advantage of a lot of the stuff that he did earlier in his career. So you look at that. To answer the Danny Ainge question, Danny's, in his mid 60s. That man is not trying to wait around at all. So the Jazz this is not something that the Jazz want to be a 4 or 5 year rebuild. They're trying to get to a point where they're a championship contender sooner rather than later. So, their plan for that is they found one guy, which is Lauri Markkenen. They found that one guy. They have to pay Lauri in 2 years, and they're going to have to give him a max. So between now and the time that they have to give him a max contract, the Jazz think they have to get 2 more guys on this roster who they consider, foundational pieces. So it'll be one thing that I think is interesting for me is whether Keonte George becomes that foundational piece. There's a lot of optimism around him at point guard internally in the organization. It's probably not going to come this year. He's not going to be Donovan Mitchell as a rookie. But the Jazz clearly think that he has star potential. So it'll be interesting to see, number one, if he can reach that potential, and number two, how long it takes him to reach that level. So that's number two. But the Jazz want to be competitive. They want to make the playoffs this year. And it'll be interesting to see if they can do it with this roster.
Once again, it is Tony Jones from The Athletic. Please go ahead and support what he's doing today and all the great work that he does on the Utah Jazz at The Athletic, athletic.com. Magic Man, any more questions for Tony on the Utah Jazz, a team that a lot of people have right now thinking that maybe it's not yet, but the future is looking good for them in the years to come?
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked their draft, Tony, and one of our draft experts, Stone Hansen, was pretty much in love with Bryce Sensabaugh. But when we watched Summer League, it looked like Keonte George it was effortless, Tony. It looked like he'd been playing there for 3 years already. But you're right? He's a teenager. He's still very young. But would you say of all the rookies that George is probably the most mature, therefore he must be the most ready of the three?
I think of his game, I think I would say that he's the most likely to make an impact right away. I think he's the most likely to be in the rotation on night one for the Jazz. And that's not even to say that he's going to be in the rotation. I just think that he's most likely out of the three. I think that, I think that there's thought that Taylor Hendricks has to become stronger. So it might take him a year to get to where he needs to be. But here's the thing with Taylor, the Jazz think that he has a chance to be special because he's one of those guys that can guard 2, 3, 4, 5, switch, then step out, hit 35 to 40% of his threes. What's going to determine his upside is how good he becomes off the dribble, how good he becomes ball in hand, doing stuff. But if not, the Jazz still think that he's one of those power forwards who can develop into a special defender while also hitting threes. And, when you can defend and hit threes in the NBA at any position, then, your value in this NBA goes through the roof. So Bryce Sensabaugh, I thought, when I was doing my evaluations, I thought he was the third best shooter in the draft. I thought that Jordan Hawkins was the best shooter. I thought that Grady Dick was the second best shooter. And I thought that, Bryce was the third best shooter. He's also somebody who, he's a lot more athletic than he looks because of his thick frame. And, he's somebody who can score from all three levels. My question with him is he ever going to defend? Because he didn't defend at Ohio State. And, how healthy is he going to stay? One of the reasons why he fell as far as he did was because of his knees. So, and he didn't even play summer league because of the knees. So, it's going to, he's healthy. He's got a clean bill of health going into training camp. But, I do think that he's somebody who could, potentially develop into, a scorer with some pop from the perimeter, especially with that, how athletic he is and how skilled he is with the basketball.
Now, Tony, if I could ask a follow-up question, were you more surprised that Cam Whitmore was falling in the draft than Sensabaugh?
No, I wasn't surprised at Cam Whitmore at all because all my sources told me that he was falling.
Okay, yeah. All right.
I didn't think I didn't think he would fall to 20.
Nobody did.
No, nobody thought that. Like, my sources ain't that good. But I knew he wasn't going 5. I knew if he got to the Jazz, I knew that he wasn't going 9. I knew the Jazz were not drafting him at 9. But I thought that, once you get into the teens, 11, 12, 13, teams look up and, oh my God, Cam Whitmore is still here. Let's, run to the podium. I thought it was going to be something like that. I did not think he was going to fall as far as he did.
One of the things I do want to ask you, though, if I can add on to that magic about a rookie, is Johnny Juzang. That was actually asked from our audiences regarding to this UCLA prospect coming out of college. Your thoughts on Johnny as far as the possible impact he could make in the NBA?
For him to have a 10-year NBA career, he's going to have to shoot 43% from three-point range. Like, he's going to essentially have to knock down half of his threes. And, he's going to have to, become better defensively. I thought he had a really good summer league. I think the Jazz like him a lot. Johnny is somebody who, first of all, I like him. I like him a ton personally. Like, he is a great guy. He's been great to deal with, great to talk to. I thought he should have come out after his junior year. Like, when he had that Final Four run with UCLA, where he was just knocking down everything, all of those contested shots. He should, like, the minute they got eliminated in the postseason press, in the post-game press conference, he should have been like, "I love UCLA, I'm out," and I would have never come back. I think he would have been drafted in the first round, and he would have had 3 to 4 years of guaranteed money. But that being said, I think that, he's a good enough shooter to where I think that he can carve out a career for himself, because the one thing that the NBA can never have enough of is shooting. And, he does some other really good things offensively, that if he gets into the right situation, like he's got to be in a situation where there's just a lights out perimeter scorer who can create open shots for him. And then he gets those open shots and then he knocks him down. He's got really good size for his position. So the size for the position isn't an issue. He's a great kid, great locker room guy. So that's not going to be an issue at all. I've seen a ton of really, really great shooters who were really, really great people who have been in the league for 14, 15 years just by being the 12th man on every team they've been on. So, I do think that Johnny is somebody who can still carve out a career in the league. He's never going to be a primary scorer. He's never going to be a ball in hand guy. But I do think that he can be a nice complementary piece or even a deep bench piece if he gets into the right spot.
Joe, any more thoughts for Tony on the Utah Jazz, my friend?
I'm curious on the drop for Cam Whitmore now that we're discussing it, because I haven't had a chance to ask anyone outside our group what happened there and what were your sources saying. Was it mainly a possible injury that was making him drop? Was it his attitude? Because we were very adamant, at least Sean and I, that we think
you and I.
I'm sorry, Gerald and I, we were adamant that the Lakers made a mistake not drafting him at 17.
So I will say this. I'll say this because, he's a kid. And for me, NBA players are humans as well. So basketball wise, I think there's concern on several fronts. So one front, he's 6'4", and he's a 3 at this point in his career. Let's say he's 6'5". Even with so the great thing about Cam Whitmore is he's got more than plus athleticism. Like, he is an elite athlete, even by NBA standards. He's one of the best vertical athletes in the draft. And he's a powerful kid, really explosive kid. So, he's somebody who's going to live on top of the rim, especially early in his career. And he could shoot the basketball, right? And he's not afraid to shoot the basketball. So those are the positives, and those are the things that people see. And you're like, oh my God, Cam's on top of the rim. Oh my God, Cam's hitting the 3. Oh my God, Cam's getting to the basket. Cam's getting to the basket at will. Let's take this guy number 5. Here's what scouts are seeing. He's 6'4" or 6'5", and he's playing a 3, which means he's going to be at a 3-inch. He's going to be at a 3-inch height disadvantage every single night, every single matchup. Okay, because NBA smalls are 6'8", and they're also really great athletes who live on top of the rim. Like, you're going against LeBron one night, you're going against Kevin Durant the next night, and you're going against Jaden McDaniels the next night, who's basically like a 6'11" spider. So, there's some concern there, lack of size for his position. The other thing, which was the huge concern, which I've talked to about 20 front office people, during the draft process. Cam's passing was a major red flag. Like, his passing in Villanova, his assist rate, things like that. So, that was another red flag. And in the fact that, Cam wasn't the greatest defender in the world, but, I think that teams can overlook that because, not many prospects really come out as great defenders. It's one of the reasons why Taylor Hendricks shot up the board, because they were like, oh my God, this kid can actually defend. Let's draft him. So, I think that those were really big issues in terms of what the on-court stuff was. And the other thing that I don't think I'm afraid to share is that he has some really bad workouts. and he had some really bad workouts for the wrong teams. Like he had a couple of bad workouts for teams at the top of the draft. So I think that kind of circulated, and by draft night, the night before draft night, I talked to 3 or 4 people, and they were like, "Yeah, we're not drafting Cam." And so that all, that all just kind of came to a head. He went 20, and to his, I think to his credit, he had, obviously he had a great summer league. Like he was aggressive, he scored a lot, and you could see even in summer league that when he gets into NBA spacing, he's going to get, he's going to score his share of points. It's the other parts of the game where he's going to have to, figure some stuff out. So, like I said, I thought he was going to go anywhere between 11 and 15. I did not foresee a drop to 20. And I knew, when the Lakers passed on him, and then when the Warriors passed on him, like I was just kind of like, okay, I'm really shocked. So.
Tell you what, though, great to have you here. Such insight, and we're truly appreciative of it. Once again, it is Tony Jones from The Athletic. Please go ahead and sign up today for a subscription as low as $1 a month that you can get right now. Go ahead and check it out at theathletic.com. I want to ask you this, Tony. We've talked about the team so far. What about the coach, Will Hardy? Want to hear your thoughts on this. You've been able to go ahead and see him now for a little while, for a season under his belt. Obviously, the way he coached up the Utah Jazz in the first part of last season was truly remarkable as far as where they were at, a playoff team in the mix for quite some time until they started to fade in the end. Your thoughts, though, on Will Hardy, some of the positives and negatives that you're getting, or maybe let's put it this way, some of the things he does really well and some of the things that you think that he needs to work on to get even better.
Man, the funny thing about what you just asked me is when you said, "Hey, what are the negatives?" And I just really can't really think of one right now.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
I don't know. I think it's going to be, I don't know if this is a negative, but I think he's going to have a real challenge this year of getting, how does he get people to buy in year 2? Because I think he had 100% buy-in in year 1, right? But
yeah,
on some levels, that's kind of easy because it's like, oh my God, he's got a roster full of, expiring contracts, guys who know that if they F up here, they're going to be out of the league, or they're going to be on the move, or, they're not going to make it to that next contract. So we're going to buy into what Will Hardy says. There's still a lot of expirings on this roster, but there's also more security on the roster than there was last year in terms of contracts. So I think that it'll be interesting to see where the buy-in is from there. But as a coach, man, like he's an elite coach. Like I think the Jazz made a home run hire. Like he's a player's coach. He's somebody who's going to coach you hard, but he also tells you why he's going to coach you hard. Like, for example, he'll yell at you for turning the ball over and he'll take you out, but then he'll sit down next to you and say, hey, this is the read that you missed. This is why you missed that. This is why I did this. This is why I did that. And I go back into the game. So he has a really good pulse on the players. He has a really good pulse on, what strengths are where. He's not afraid to experiment. He's not, like I told you earlier, he's not afraid to experiment with lineups. His ATOs are really good. He runs really good ATOs, really good stuff. His in-game adjustments are really good. And I think that the big barometer with NBA teams is how hard they play from night to night. and the Jazz played their behinds off every single night. Even when they pulled the plug in March, they had to. It was funny because they were like, okay, you know, we're going to take Jordan Clarkson away from the group, and that's going to pull the plug, and we're going to start losing. They didn't start losing when they pulled Jordan Clarkson from the group. All right, we're going to sit Colin Sexton. We're going to slow play Colin Sexton. It didn't help. They had to pull Lauri Markkenen and Walker Kessler to lose enough games to even get to the 9 spot last year, and that was a real testament of how well coached they were and how competitive that group was. There was a game against the Lakers late in the season where the Jazz clearly did not wish to win that game. And they won the game. And let's just say that there was
we surely remember that, Tony. We surely remember that game. Simone Fontecchio, I remember, just went off.
Yep.
So yeah, we just saw it. It was like, Will Hardy's a good coach, man. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Listen, there were some front office people in front row that were like, Lakers, please, what are you doing? Win the game. And it was comedy. It really was comedy. But I mean, it just encapsulates how good a coach and how good a job Will Hardy did with that team last year. Now the challenge is, can he do it again under different circumstances? And I think that the good thing going into this year for him is that he knows that the front office isn't going to pull the plug this year. If he's winning too many games, there's not going to be a trade 2 weeks later. There still are going to be some trades. There are some people on this roster right now who I'll be surprised if they're on the roster by the end of the season. But the overall mission, everybody, the overall mission is there. Like, the Jazz really, truly want to make the playoffs. So, they can put their foot on the gas and win as many games as possible. So I think that that's a good thing. But, like I said earlier, like, he's got a significant challenge ahead of him. He's got 12 guys who I think are rotation guys. And that might not include 2 or 3 rookies who, if Taylor Hendricks is your 13th guy, your fan base is going to be like, yo, we drafted this guy number 9, play him, get him in the game somehow. And, that might be difficult to sell once it becomes December and January and February, particularly if they are losing. So I do think that there are going to be some challenges ahead, but overall, I consider that higher an A+. I think the Jazz really hit a home run there.
So I ask you, Tony, truly appreciate, again, the time that you're taking to talk to us right here at the Lakers Fast Break. It is Tony Jones from The Athletic. Please go ahead and support him today on theathletic.com. One of the things I want to ask you, you mentioned that there are players, like for us here, we think that there might be some tweaks by the time February rolls around as well on our roster. That's pretty much the consensus from us. Who do you think is the most likely trade targets or individuals that you say most likely will not be here or will not be on the Jazz roster post trade deadline? Olynyk, Clarkson, Sexton, THD. Who do you think are the ones that really stand out as trade targets come from January and February?
I won't say names because I do think that stuff affects people. But I think if you look at the roster and you look at the overall, values of the guys, you look at the positions that some of the guys play, you can kind of tell, like, there are a lot of expirings on the roster. There's veterans expirings, and there are, expirings at places where others need to play.
Okay.
So I think that, if I don't even think you need a fine tooth comb, but if you just do, some Dick Tracy investigative work, look at the roster, you can kind of tell and you can kind of deduce and you can kind of guess. But the one thing I'll say is this, just like having 5 guys that can conceivably be your point guard on opening night is crazy. And and it's going to be like training camp's going to be really interesting. Will Hardy yesterday said it's going to be like the Hunger Games in training camp. Everybody's going to be trying to kill everybody else. So I think at some point the Jazz are just going to have to make a consolidation trade, and it's going to be interesting to see if it comes in December or whether it comes at the trade deadline. And I also think that how the season goes is going to kind of affect what happens in terms of what moves the front office makes. But everybody knows Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck. Those are aggressive guys who have never been afraid to make a move or shake things up. And this team for me, and I've said this before, this is a regular season roster. Like, I legitimately think that the Jazz can win 43 games, maybe even 45 games, and make the playoffs as a 6 seed. And then, or make the playoffs as a 7 seed, or make the playoffs as an 8 seed. And then they'll play Denver or the Lakers or the Suns, and they'll lose in 4 or 5 games. And the reason why they're losing 4 or 5 games, because there's a huge difference between having a regular season roster and having an NBA playoff roster. They don't have an NBA playoff closer on this roster right now, and they have to find one. They have, I think Lauri is, if you win an NBA championship with Lauri Markkenen on the roster, I think that Lauri is going to be your second best player. They don't have the best player on an NBA title roster on this roster right now. So I think that it's a better roster than last year. I think it's a regular season roster in terms of the young legs, the athleticism, the length, some of the things that they can do, some of the things that they do, they're going to run into the Phoenix Suns on January 17th when the Suns don't want to play and they're going to win that game by 30 just because they want to play and the Suns don't. Things like that. But then when if you get into a play-in or you get into the playoffs, all of the flaws of this roster will be exposed really quickly and really easily. So the Jazz's trick is to develop the parts of this roster that needs to be developed while figuring out a way to add to the roster with the assets that they have going towards the future.
I was going to say, if it's like the Hunger Games, Tony, I was going to ask you who the Katniss Everdeen would be in that situation.
That question was actually asked in the press conference, word for word.
Oh, my gosh.
The answer was Kelly Olynyk.
Okay. Yeah. Keep your arms at bay when it comes to Kelly Olynyk.
I'm going to say this. I couldn't believe that question. I couldn't believe the Katniss question was asked.
Oh, my gosh.
Will Hardy was like, oh my God, I've never been asked this before. This is a great question. And it was 10 minutes of awkward silence in the entire room before we actually got an answer.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. I will ask this, Magic Man, for Tony. Is there any more Utah Jazz questions? He's been sensational with us so far, but if not, we'll go ahead and head to ask his thoughts on the Lakers. But any last questions, Magic Man and Joe, before we head on out? Magic Man?
No, Tony's covered it cover to cover as far as I'm concerned.
Joe, any last thoughts on the Utah Jazz before
I was going to ask him where he thought the Utah would be towards the end, and he answered it.
Oh, there you go. Absolutely.
Well, my answer to that would be anywhere from 6 to 11. Okay. 6 if everything goes right, 11 if they get a couple injuries. Yeah. I think 6 is their ceiling. I think 11 is their floor.
Fair enough indeed. But before we head on out, we always ask our guests, because We've been doing NBA observations of all 30 NBA teams. We're one of the final clubs that we've done so far. So we're almost finished with our entire list of teams, and we're truly grateful to everyone that has spent their time talking to us about the teams that they cover on a regular basis. But the team we ask also as well that you go ahead and if you can provide some insight on us. We love to get outside perspectives on the Lakers and where you think they are going this season, their perspectives as far as the season's concerned, what you see for them going forward this coming year. Your thoughts on the LA Lakers for 23-24?
Well, I mean, simply put, if you want to put it simply, I think that they're capable of winning a championship. I think they need to get D'Angelo Russell off the roster in order to do it. But I think they're capable of doing it. I think that this might be the first team that LeBron's ever been on to where he doesn't have to really exert himself. Even the Miami teams, he had to exert himself because, those were three guys. People talk about Miami and they say, "Oh, that was a super team. It was a super team." Go look at those rosters 4 to 15, 4 to 12. And it was extremely top heavy. But you're looking at
those three were in the desert a lot by themselves, Tony.
Yes,
no doubt.
They were in the desert a lot by themselves. They stole a championship in 2013. They were not better than the Spurs. They were not the better team. LeBron was just that good. And then the Spurs got to 2014, and there was just nothing that Miami was going to be able to do. But
that was a clap back of all time.
Yeah, it was. So, but the depth of this team, the athleticism, I think the defensive ceiling. I'm not a Christian Wood guy at all, but I do think that the Lakers are the one team that he can work with because you're just never going to start crap in a LeBron James locker room. Like, it's just never going to happen.
I love the analogy, though, that people say that I've heard since, the talk of Christian Wood is if LeBron gets Christian Wood to play the way that Christian Wood can on a team like this, that he will be considered the greatest player of all time.
I mean, listen, people like I look on Twitter and people, like, well, why isn't Christian Wood this and that? And I'm like, listen, there are so many reasons why. And, but if LeBron can get him just to a basketball sense, not even defense, just what he does well, which is, stretch you out, score the ball, I believe they have the pieces that can make up for him defensively, at least in the regular season. We'll see what happens in the playoffs. But, there's just so much upside. LeBron doesn't have to play 82 on this team. He doesn't have to score 28 a night on this team. He can pick his spots. And, the goal for this team right now is just get him to the playoffs to where he's not exhausted by Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. Because if you looked at that second half, he had nothing left, even though he had, 41, 10, and 9 or whatever he had. There was nothing left in the second half. And so, I think that there's a lot more depth on the team. I think there's a lot more talent on the team. Darvin Ham should never, ever play three guards together ever again. Like, Austin Reeves should not be guarding Michael Porter Jr.
You are preaching to the choir on that one.
Yeah, Tony, when Aaron Gordon was turning him into his own personal, I don't know what you would call it. It was like a punching bag.
Yeah.
That was not a good thing, man. And you're preaching to the choir, brother, because we hate the 3-guard lineup.
Yeah,
those are five syllables we don't want to hear.
That has irritated Lakers fans from the U.S. to all the way over to the Philippines and beyond. We've heard it all over the world about Darvin Ham. We're not even kidding about Darvin Ham's 3.
Like, for me, like, once you get to the playoffs, like, to me, the best lineup for the Lakers for me is LeBron at the 1. Don't do it you don't have to do it in the regular season, but you get to the playoffs. You have LeBron at the 1. You have Austin Reeves at the 2. You have Roy at the 3, and then pick whatever you want. If you have JV at the 4 and AD at the 5, or you have Christian Wood at the 4, AD at the 5, or if you have AD at the 4 and Jackson Hayes at the 5, or whatever, Denver proved last year that athletic size, like Denver was not only just big, they were big and athletic. Like Michael Porter Jr. can move, can run and jump. Aaron Gordon could run and jump. He was a monster. Bruce Brown was playing backup point guard, and Dennis Schroeder was having to guard him. Like that's 6'6" against 6 foot. There was just so much. They were so big and they were so ahead of the rest of the NBA with that size and length. I think that in the offseason, I think that the Lakers closed the gap on the Nuggets with the way they constructed the roster. So now the roster has to be played in the way that it was constructed. We'll see what happens. But I do think that the Lakers, the Nuggets, the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Suns are, teams that I look at as teams that can win a championship.
Awesome indeed. You'll hear your thoughts on what the Lakers and, of course, the Utah Jazz. Tony, it's been great having you on. We'd love to have you on. I know you're extremely busy and doing great work for The Athletic. Hopefully during the season, we can bring you back on if you're available. Truly appreciate it and indebted to you for your time. Before we head on out, though, it's time for you to give the cheap plug to everybody out there on exactly where you're at, what they can go ahead and do, and to follow you or whatever it is you want to go ahead and plug. The floor is now yours, my friend.
Okay. Follow me at T Jones on the NBA on Twitter. I'm never going to call it X. You can follow me at T Jones Athletic on Instagram. But you will see a lot of basketball stuff, but you'll also see a lot of pictures of my wife and kids, or maybe just my kids. Don't let my wife see that. Yeah, you can follow me there, or if you want to really go old school, I'm on Facebook as well. But that's like, that's just me complaining about the Commanders, because I'm a Commanders fan. So I complain about the Commanders and the Hoyas and my Knicks on Facebook, because I know that that's where the least amount of people see it. So,
what's going to be the new nickname, Tony?
We're big. Me and Joe are big Eric Bieniemy fans after he gave everybody what because they didn't want to finish.
Right. Well, we're gonna get smashed tomorrow. So we're at the Eagles. So it's not gonna be. I'm not looking forward to a good time tomorrow. But yeah,
I'm a Raider fan. I'm not looking forward to tomorrow either, man.
Listen,
without Garoppolo,
I'm playing against Justin Herbert tomorrow. So if you could just kindly tell your defense to give a crap tomorrow, just do that. Because I played Aaron Jones today. I played Aaron Jones this week, and I only got 2 points from him. So I really need Justin Herbert to not have a great game, because I'm also playing against Christian McCaffrey and Kenneth Walker, and there's just no way that they're not going to score 20 points. So my only hope of winning this week is Justin Herbert not having a good game.
Awesome indeed to have you here. Truly appreciate it. Joe or Sean, any last thoughts before we head out for Tony?
Tony, thank you again. I'm extremely grateful. We're the little channel that could right now. We're trying to rise up the ranks, and just for you taking time here, really appreciate it, brother. I mean, we're hoop heads, and we really appreciate an OG coming by and dropping some knowledge. So I really appreciate you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you so much for having me. Never call me Mr. Jones again. Just call me Tony.
Got it.
I really, seriously, I really appreciate it. You guys have wonderful questions. This is a wonderful conversation, and I'm really honored that you guys reached out to me and had me on. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Joe, any last thoughts, my friend?
I apologize for the fireworks outside. Tony, I have a question for you since you brought
Yes,
up
sir.
Twitter.
We were celebrating I guess they were celebrating the great interview we just had.
Yes,
Absolutely.
they did. They were accumulating the finishing touches on that. The question I have for you is, if Elon Musk decides to charge for Twitter, will you pay?
I've blocked Elon Musk. So
That's your answer right there.
there's your answer.
Because you have a pretty good amount of followers. So
I'll tell them just to go and see me on Threads.
Fair enough, indeed.
I will convert and build on Threads in a heartbeat.
Because I think Gerald's thinking about paying, right, Gerald?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I'm not paying a red cent for what that man has done to that app.
I agree with you. My wife was like a couple months ago. She was like, my friends at work, they really like their Tesla. Don't even start. Don't even start. I'll get an electric car. Absolutely. That's not named Tesla. Anything else but a Tesla. Will not do it because of him. Just absolutely. Well, don't ask me to give any money to that guy after what he said and done. So we'll leave it at that. So
I'm not an Elon Musk guy. I'm like, if
you and I both.
If there's a charge for Twitter, it's not gonna include me. People are asking me if I was going to pay the $8 a month for a blue check mark. Nah, you either find me or you don't.
Exactly. Tony, it's been sensational having you on. Again, please, everyone out there, please go ahead and support Tony on his Twitter/X while it's still available. Unless Elon has other plans, but he's at T Jones on the NBA for now there. Or you might have to find him at Threads here in the not too distant future. But also support the great work that he does, the absolutely sensational work that he does on the Utah Jazz today at theathletic.com. If you type in on a search, I'll give everybody a lowdown. If you type in on a search, the Athletic promo, absolutely what comes up for you is $1 a month for an entire year on the Athletic right there for you. It's $1. All you have to spend each and every month right there for a year for theathletic.com. All the stories, all the great news, and plus all the great updates that Tony gives you right there at theathletic.com. Tony, great to have you on. Looking forward to a great season for your Utah Jazz and for our Lakers, and looking forward to bringing you back on when you are available right here on the Lakers Fast Break Podcast. Always got to close out with that, Joe, of course. Tony was awesome. I'm just so grateful that he's on the show.
Hey, this Lakers logo, are we going to get demonetized?